So our next speaker is Dr. Praveen Krishna, who is the director of Cornea Institute, LUPI, heading the refractive, cataract, and contact lens services, consultant cornea and anterior segment services, an acclaimed surgeon of admirable repute. And let's look at what learning he has to show in his video. On to you,
Thanks,
Doctor.
Nina,
thanks,
phone.
Doc. You can see my slides now, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Chitra, and thank you again for having me as part of this session. Commendable job every time you do this AARC sessions. I think there are tremendous learning opportunities for everyone. So what I'm going to show you in the next 4 or 5 minutes or so is not something that is really high tech, but potentially something that all of us can come across during our regular refractive surgery practices. I call this off target because I'd like to start this presentation with introducing you to a patient's photograph. This is a patient that I saw in July of last year, in the middle of the lockdown period. Patient had traveled from another city with poor vision in the left eye following a microkeratome LASIK that was done 5 weeks back. And if you look at her cornea, there is a scar on the cornea, which is in the visual axis. What was interesting also was the fact that the nasal edge of the scar had a very straight line. So that's the clue for this one. She had a pretty poor vision. She was a low myope, minus 3.5, but she ended up with a minus 1.5 cylinder, and she was not correcting beyond 20/80 on diffraction. When we looked at topography, topography also showed that there was an area of flattening on the nasal side of the cornea corresponding to the scar. And the OCT showed a scar in the area would seem to be in the area of the interface. That was again located at the edge of the pupil and coming into the visual axis. So let's just take a break and look at some of the important things to consider when you're doing LASIK. For example, when you're doing a femtosecond LASIK, all of us do pay attention. There was some discussion about centration of the flap and ensuring your flap can be moved around. Well, this is possible with some lasers, and most femtosecond laser flaps tend to be well centered because you have much better control over where you're delivering the laser. With a microkeratome too, this is mostly possible for the large part. But then again, sometimes if you have a small cornea, you might have a slightly smaller flap or a flap that is not optimal. But for the most part, you will see that microkeratome flaps also are relatively large and give you adequate area for ablation. Now, sometimes you will end up with flaps that are decentered with a femtosecond, like you see here, and also with a microkeratome, as you can see here. And this poses a problem because you cannot ablate according to your planned optic zone. In femtosecond lasers, the most common cause for this kind of decentration is either a pseudosuction or maybe an eccentric docking of the cornea if you have not been able to center the dock on the pupil or the visual axis appropriately. In microkeratome, this is because typically of a wrong choice of the ring size depending on the microkeratome that you're using. Also, if you have a larger hinge, like you see in the picture on the left side, the area that you have available for ablation is usually lesser as compared when you have a larger hinge. You also might have a small flap, but typically if you have a small flap and you have mostly a spherical refractive error, you will be able to deliver that ablation, which is the blue zone, in the area that you've made your flap. But all ablations are not in the central 6 millimeter zone that you plan. And say, for example, depending on the kind of ablation, the kind of laser machine you have, the area where the ablation is delivered is going to be different. Say, for example, with a compound myopic astigmatism, this is the ablation profile on the Allegretto laser. And with a hyperopic astigmatism, this is the ablation profile. And note, for a 6.5 optic zone, some of the ablation actually is going up to 8.5 millimeters as well. So let's go back to another patient. This is a patient who was seen not very long ago. You see, about 2 months ago, had a relatively high cylinder. And this patient was planned for a microkeratome LASIK because this is what the patient chose. This is a flap thickness of 100 microns with the Moria. And the microkeratome laser, at least the flap seemed to be pretty well centered. This is a +2 ring on the Moria, which is what is used for somebody with a small corneal diameter. As you can see, some of the sclera is already visible, so it's a small cornea. and had a relatively steep cornea, and that's why a +2 was used. The flap seemed to be pretty good, thin flap, and you see that the hinge is quite small as well. But watch as the ablation begins. As the ablation begins, you'll see that the initial part of the ablation that is delivered in the center lands within the area of the bed that is exposed. But the last bit of the ablation, if you look at the ablation, actually happens over the underside of the flap. So all this seems to be innocuous, and the surgeon doesn't really notice what is going on until the surgeon starts to actually dry the flap and try to move it. And here you see the flap actually gets undone, and they have a free flap in this case because of the fact that in this case, the undersurface of the hinge got ablated. So this patient eventually did well at the 1 week follow-up, had 20/20 vision, but the problem in patients like this actually starts later and not in the initial post-op period. So like in the first patient that I showed you, what seems to have happened is the surgeon had a small flap and also had part of the hinge within the visual axis of the optic zone. And when the surgeon delivered the laser ablation, part of the laser ablation also was delivered onto the underside of the flap. And that's the reason why the shape of the scar in the flap after it is put back is that inverted or that D-shaped kind of shape. So the simplest way that you can prevent this is to use a cellulose sponge in case you have a small flap or a large hinge, a small area for ablation, or if you feel that some of your laser is going to be delivered on the flap, or you can reduce your optic zone before you start ablating. So simple things like this will prevent complications that happen in this patient. This patient with a contact lens eventually was 20/20. Obviously, this patient was not very happy. And also you will see that the scar in the patient is at the bottom of the flap, which is the clue to how the scar actually developed. If you look at the aberrations, again, extremely high aberrations, both from the surface of the cornea and also from the scar that we have below the surface of the cornea. And a couple of take-home points from this case. This actually is published in the December issue of IGO. So if you want to read a little more about the patient, you can read this. It's called A Shape of a Clue. But what is important is to ensure that you spend some time to optimize the flap size in all patients, especially those in whom you're using a microkeratome. Ensure good centration of the flap on your visual axis or on the pupil, which is what most people tend to aim for. Be aware of your ablation pattern so you know where it's going to be delivered. Optimize the optical zone in case you have a smaller area for ablation, and always use a cellulose sponge over the hinge of your flap to protect your flap, and you won't have a complication like this. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Praveen. There were a lot of take-home points in your presentation. One other clue, if you're using a microkeratome and it's a small eye, it makes sense to expose a little bit of the superior limbus or even with a femtoflap. So that way you could avoid a low hinge in these small eyes. And one option is, supposing you have planned initially a 6.5 millimeter zone and you're little getting off center and likely to be a low hinge, you know it, then maybe you could decrease the optic zone to 6. But I wouldn't advise otherwise. I would advise that if you know it's a low hinge, you put the flap back and do not treat. Because if you ablate on the undersurface, it gets thinned out, it scars later. So actually, there was a patient who had this problem, and we went ahead and did a topo-guided regularization and sorted out this higher order aberration and the challenge which was there. So if the patient keeps coming back to you and there is a low hinge which has got created, that is the way to salvage the situation. Any other?
But Chitra, this scar was quite at a lower depth.
Yeah.
So how would the surface ablation work? What would you do, Praveen, in this case?
No, if the patient
prevention is one thing, but now what do you do once it has happened?
So if the
I like the way you've got lost in this forest.
Yeah. So I think the goal of the presentation was twofold. One is to ensure that we budding surgeons always use something to protect the hinge, which is something that we don't pay attention to sometimes. And also for the fact that if you see a scar that is of that shape, to be able to recognize why that happened. Like you asked, I would also say that if the patient wants surgery, I probably would go ahead and do a topo-guided regularization, but probably as a two-stage procedure, because I don't think a single stage will work for such patients.
Yes, very true. You can salvage the situation with a topo-guided regularization. Thanks a lot. That was a great learning tip.